Well, hey folks, Dr. Grimes here. I wanted to take a little bit of time in this video to talk through some critical components of our syllabus, most especially the grading portion and the requirements of the course. Most of the rest of the syllabus is set up very similar to what you see in every other class, so you're familiar with where to look to find objectives and things like that, but it's not always evident exactly what I mean in a short little paragraph where I talk about one of the requirements of the class, or maybe how numbers work together to create a final grade. So that's what I wanted to try to concentrate on in this video. Make sure that you had a pretty clear understanding of what it is that I was expecting you to do. If you haven't already printed off your syllabus, it's going to be really to your advantage if you do so before you watch the rest of this video. And I'm going to assume that at some point here you're going to pause this and print the syllabus so that you can have a copy sitting there in front of you to make notes on, or to highlight or whatever before watching the rest of this. And I'm assuming that at this point you have done that. If you're kind of waiting to make sure that I'm at a good stopping point, I have hit a good stopping point a time or two here. You need to go, very, very strongly encourage at least, that you need to go and print that syllabus before we go any farther. All right, so I'm assuming that now that I've given you two chances to print it, you've actually done that. Scroll down to page number 3, or turn to page number 3 in your copy of the syllabus and look at our schedule here. Every week, we're going to have a topic that we're going to be discussing. Now, notice in the email that I sent you to give you the information about the book, and I think in the little short video on our home page, the Welcome to Class video, I mentioned that we're going to be doing discussion boards the entire semester, and that we're going to be focusing on those topics that are currently the hot button issues that HR is having to deal with. In some cases, they are things that HR is struggling with right now. In some cases, they are things that are bubbling and HR is going to be struggling with in the next year or two. But all of them are going to be really important issues for HR folks to be able to think through, to be able to research, to be able to express in their own terms to senior management some counsel on what do we do. For example, one of the topics will deal with how we look at people that we're trying to hire. And at some point, the senior managers may come to HR and say, we're starting to see this. What should we do about it? And it'll be helpful and part of the learning process of this course if you can research a topic through SHRM, come to some good ideas of what the trend is, what it's looking like, is it a fad, is it not going away, and be able to make some legitimate recommendations within the culture of our company, what we should do to prepare for this, or what we should do to react to that. And I'll get into a little bit further in just a bit on what that looks like. So you see that every week for the first 14 weeks leading up to Thanksgiving, there is a topic or an issue that we're going to be talking about through our discussion boards. We are just about the right size class. 10 people can make for a fairly good little discussion board. During the summer, I had a class that only had 3, so everybody posted a couple of times, and then it's like, well, there's no new ideas. With 10, there's constantly new ideas being introduced. There's much more likely going to be some differences of opinion. For example, when we talk about assuming that we talk about body art, tattoos and piercings and things like that, it could very well be that somebody in the class says, what's wrong with that? And somebody else says, no, you've got to be professional and conservative. So there may be times when we disagree about things. And I want you to be able in these discussion boards to share what you think, not be so firmly entrenched in it that I'm not changing my mind and doggone it doesn't matter what you say, but to be able to say, hey, this is my initial perspective on this. Here's what I think. This is why I think this way. This is why I feel this way. This is part of who I am. And somebody else say, well, maybe you haven't thought about this. Consider this. Does that change the way that you look at it? And you might say, well, you know, that causes me to at least think about it from a different perspective. That kind of interaction will mean for me as a teacher that we have been successful in discussing issues, doing it very respectfully, very professionally, but in a way where we're maybe open to new viewpoints that we hadn't considered before this. So look at our schedule here. This week, already open, is the discussion board on strategy. And the idea of that is that HR, to be effective, needs to be part of the strategy of the organization, needs to be intimately involved in the strategic planning. So the articles that you'll read this week in SHRM relate to how HR can be a strategic partner. Next week, we're going to talk about the generations in the workforce and how potentially you're walking into a setting in HR where there are people anywhere from about 18 years old to about 70 years old that are working, and they're so different. What makes them different? How do we work with all of them, get them working and talking and sharing and things like that? Starting in week number 3, you guys are going to be doing the research. For the strategy and the generations, there are already articles loaded out there in the discussion board for the particular topic in SHRM. There's also already some background information in the form of talking points. I'll mention that later. There's already a discussion question set up. But starting with week 3, you guys are going to pick a topic. You're going to research the topic. You're going to give to me the URLs, the titles of the SHRM articles. You're going to give to me the well-developed talking points, and you're going to give to me the discussion question or questions, and I'll have it loaded out there. And then during the week of that discussion, you as the team leaders will be more active trying to get people to share their ideas, asking questions, and so forth. So weeks 1 through 14, there's a new topic every week, topic discussions 1 through 14. At the end of the week, not before Sunday, the discussion board generally opens up Sunday morning and closes the next Sunday morning. So it's open 8 days to be able to interact. After that discussion board has closed on Sunday night, so Monday or Tuesday perhaps, you're going to think back over the week and you're going to say, all right, now what did I learn about this? How has my perspective changed? How has my mind been open to a different way of thinking? Even if you didn't change my mind, you at least got me different thinking in a different perspective. So I understand somebody who may disagree with me on this. First, what have I learned? Secondly, how would I express this to my senior managers? And then thirdly, if it were an issue that we were dealing with in my organization, what advice would I give to my senior managers? So basically 3 parts to that topic recap. It could conceivably be done on the front side of one page. I'm not looking for a big report. I'm not looking for references and citations and stuff like that. I'm just looking for, what did you learn? How would you express this to somebody else? And what counsel would you give senior management if they asked HR, what do we do about this? So that every week is a recap of last week. So I've got topic recap 1 on week 1's our activities list, but it's really due at the beginning of week 2, Monday or Tuesday of week 2. Same way all the way through. While we're doing these discussions and these recaps, you're going to pick an organization. Maybe you work there, maybe you know somebody who works there, and you're going to try to make contact with one of their HR people. And you're going to develop a relationship with that HR person. It's going to certainly help if it's your mom, or if it's your real good friend, or if it's the place that you work, you already know this person. Some of you who aren't working anywhere right now will have to go find an organization and say, listen, I'm in this class at school, I'm an HR major. I really wanted to try to develop a relationship with one of the HR people and interview them and talk to them about HR and so forth. So the professional paper is going to be a 4, maybe 5-page paper where you introduce to me that person, the organization in the context, that person and their background and what got them into HR. You'll also talk about what that person thinks the real trends are in the world, in the U.S., in their organization. And you'll also talk about some particular issue or issues that they're dealing with right now that they don't really necessarily have an answer to. And that'll be the bulk of the professional paper. When the professional paper is done, then you'll start working on the second paper, which is also going to be 3, 4 pages, maybe 5 pages, that I'm calling the issue paper. And what I want you to do is to take one of those issues. If that professional HR person that you talked to said, we're dealing with these 3 issues, maybe one of them is recruiting millennials, and maybe one of them is motivation or retention, and one of them is that we've got really lousy job descriptions, or whatever those issues are. I want you to pick one of them and try to find something that you could recommend as a consultant that they do to help address that issue. And it may not solve the issue. If there's a problem with motivation, you're not going to solve that issue. But you might say, hey, let's have an employee picnic. And that's part of what we're going to do. Now, I'm not looking in the issue paper for you to throw out 4 different ideas, 12 different ideas. I'm looking for you to throw out one specific thing that will help with that issue that you chose. But in this paper, you're going to research SHRM, come up with some ideas, but you're also going to think about what it would take to implement that idea. And so your paper, there's some really specific guidelines in the Dropbox when it opens in week number 6 for the issue paper that'll get you thinking right. But I want you to really write a paper having done some research on what would I do if I was HR trying to deal with this issue in my company. And then at the end of the semester, you're going to want to do an oral presentation via video conference. And it will work best if you can build on that issue paper that you just wrote about. In the oral presentation, the idea is that senior management has asked you to come up with a solution to this problem, or that will start to address this problem. And in 8 minutes, tell us as senior management everything we need to know to be able to say yes or no. Much more detail will come in another video that I record later on in the semester, but you're thinking towards that now. If your professional paper leads you into a good issue for that company, then your issue paper could build all the framework for the presentation to where all you're doing is taking what you got from the issue paper and delivering it in an oral presentation to convince senior management. We'll talk more about that as the time comes. So you can see a couple of major things here. Twice during the semester, either team 1 through team 6, you'll be on one of those teams. No, actually 3 times. You'll be part of team 1, 2, 3, or 4. You'll be part of team 5, 6, 7, 8, and you'll be part of team 9, 10, 11, 12. So 3 times during the semester, you'll be part of a team of either 2 or 3 people which researches and leads the discussion for the week. 14 times during the semester, you will be part of discussion boards. 14 times during the semester, you'll write a recap paper about what you learned. And then you'll produce a professional HR person paper, an issue paper. You'll do a project at the end of the semester. It's an individual project. And then you'll have a final exam. So how does that break down here? Topic leads, they're worth 100 points each. They're going to look at things like what kinds of articles did you give me as part of your team? How many of them did you give me? When did you give them to me? What kind of discussion questions did you come up with? What kinds of talking points did you come up with? A lot of this is terminology that you really don't know yet. But as you look at what I gave you for the first discussion, which is related to strategy, and as you look at what I gave you for the generations discussion next week, you'll kind of get a feel for what the articles need to look like. As you look through my talking points, you'll get a good idea for what the structure is and what the content should be on that. And then you just, in your group, come up with 1 or 2, maybe 3 questions related to that topic that you think could generate some good discussion on a discussion board. And the quality of that question or questions is part of the grading. How many times you post to your own discussion board is part of that grading. How many of the discussion posts that other people in the class have made is part of that discussion or that grading. So each one of those is worth 100 points, and the sum of those 3 taken as an average. So you get a 90, you get an 80, you get an 85. The average comes to like 86 or 87 or something like that. That average of 87 is weighted at 20% towards the final grade. Each discussion each week is worth 15 points. And there are 5 pieces that I'm looking to. The first piece is that you need to have looked at those SHRM articles by Tuesday afternoon at probably the latest. Sunday, Monday, Tuesday afternoon, you need to have looked at all of the SHRM articles that they have posted out there from that team. You need to have read through the talking points and looked at the discussion questions. And by Tuesday night, you need to have made an initial post on that discussion board. And then either Tuesday or Wednesday, maybe Thursday, you go in and you look at what other people have read and you make a reply to one of theirs. And again on Thursday or Friday, and again on Saturday maybe. So during the course of the week, you make an initial post on Monday or Tuesday, maybe even Sunday. You do 3 follow-up posts on other people's discussions. So 4 total posts during the week, not all at the same time. So part of the grading is, when did you make your initial post? Part of the grading is, did you make at least 4, or how many posts did you make during the week? Part of the grading is, how many days did you post on? Not all the same day, ideally on at least 3 different days. Part of the grading is how many different people did you post on, at least 3 different people. And then part of the grading is how many of the other people's posts did you read. Each one of those things is worth up to 3 points, so potentially 15 points per week. We'll add up all those 15 scores, 9 and 10 and 10 and 15 and 12 and 14 and 15 and 15 and 12 and 15 and so forth until we have 14 grades. Add them up. It's a possible 210. So you've got 195 out of 210. That is a percentage, 82%, whatever, weighted at 10%. All right. 14 times every week, you're going to write that little summary recap of what you've learned the last week. Those are worth 10 points apiece. A great deal of that is what you learned. A little bit of that is how would you present that to senior management. A little bit of that is how would you explain it. I guess 2 different variations of that. And a little bit of that is spelling and grammar. But 10 points apiece. Again, you take the total points that you accumulated as a percentage of the possible 140, and that's weighted at 10%. Your professional paper is worth 5%. Your issue paper is worth 5%. Your project that you will do is worth 30%. So as we get closer to that, I'll put another video out so that you'll know exactly what to do and exactly what the rubric looks like. Another thing that I do in my online classes a lot of times is I track how frequently you log into GoView, into this class specifically. And I'm going to say that I'm expecting you to log in every day, Monday through Friday. And you might log in Saturday or Sunday, you might not. Those are kind of the free days. But with like 17 weeks of class, not counting Labor Day, not counting the 3 Thanksgiving holidays, there are, let's say, 5 times 17 is, let's say there's 65 days that you could possibly log in that are weekdays. And let's say that after I track this, you have actually logged in on 58 of those 65 days. That is a percentage, like 93. That percentage of days that you logged in will be weighted at 10% towards your final grade. So it is really to your advantage to log in every day at least once, Monday through Friday, to read discussion posts, to make discussion posts, to see if there's any announcements, those kinds of things. And then the final exam is worth 100 points. It really is, it's not through ProctorU, it is through the quizzes section of the class, and it's really more of an essay, short essay kind of thing. You might write 3 or 4 sentences per question, and the questions will be related to some of the topics that we've talked about. What did you learn about this particular topic? Or what did you learn as a result of doing the professional paper and interacting with that professional? Probably part of it will be, here's one of the objectives of the class. As you look back up to the top of this, the objectives here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Maybe there's a question, probably there's a question that says, learning outcome number 2 was this. Tell me how you think you accomplished that. Tell me whether you think you did or did not. All right, so that's the grading point. There's 1,150 possible points, but not all points are the same. For the professional paper, the points are worth less than the project paper. Even though they're both 100-point things, that 100 points is only 5% of your grade, whereas that 100 points is 30% of your grade. So a couple of things that I would suggest to you as we get started here, especially when it comes to discussions and recaps, because they're not 100-point assignments, they're 15 and 10-point assignments. If you get a 13 out of 15, it will probably show up in your grade book as like an 87. Don't immediately say, oh, an 87, oh, how horrible. It's not a 100-point assignment. It has to translate that into an 100-point equivalency, but ignore the equivalency. Look at it as a 13 out of 15. Why do I suggest that? Because that means if you got a 13 out of 15, you've lost 2 points. If you look at it as an 87 out of 100, you've lost 13 points. There's a big difference between losing 2 points and losing 13 points. All right. Second thing is, if you don't even turn in the professional paper, 0 on the professional paper, you could conceivably still get an A in the class. If you did perfectly on everything else, you've got a 95 because it's only worth 5% of the grade. So keep those things in mind as you go forward. With all of that said, talking through the schedule up here and talking through the grading here, most of what comes ahead in the descriptions we've already talked about. If you see something in the descriptions that you don't really understand because I haven't talked about it, let me encourage you to go out to our class and find the Ask Dr. Grimes discussion board and post a question out there that I can reply to for the entire class. Now, some of the things like the project and the papers, you're not going to know enough about yet because you don't need to know that yet. And as we get closer, I'll record another video to talk you through it and to show you some examples. So hopefully at this point now, you've got an idea of what I expect from you, what the activities are going to be. It may seem a little bit much right now, but you'll get into a routine where you know that every week you got to make a couple of posts to discussion board and be working towards the next paper or project. But it's a very, very manageable class. It just requires that you log in regularly just to see what's out there. I expect everybody in the team that's leading the week to post at least 6 times to their own discussion board, and anybody who's not leading the team that week to post 4 times. So with 10 people, you've got potentially about 45 posts a week. And if somebody gets into it and posts 10 times rather than 4 times, a little bit more than that. So you might have 50, 60, maybe even 70 posts that you have to read. Don't take long to read, but if you wait until Sunday to read them all, it can be a lot. I'm also going to encourage you to get all of your posting done by Saturday night. The discussion board is open through Sunday night, but the idea is that everybody's pretty well finished with the discussion by Saturday night. So Sunday, it's just reading anything that you haven't read yet. If people wait until if the board closes at 11:59 on Sunday and people wait until 11:50 on Sunday to make their posts, nobody can possibly read all the posts because they're not awake at midnight to read those last 20 posts that came in. So let me encourage you or challenge you to make all of your posts for the week by Saturday night. And then during Sunday, just leisurely read what you haven't read. But be reading all week long. As you log in and you see there's 4 new posts, go read them. And then maybe that's one that you want to respond to. Let me also encourage you that you make your initial post, but that your 3 follow-up posts come on other people's discussion boards, not yours. You might post something great and somebody responds to it and you want to respond to their response, and I would encourage you not to use that as one of your 4, that you post to other people's boards. All right, I'm thinking in terms of the discussion posts that the initial posts are between 150 and 200 words. That's not an awful lot, and I'm not going to count them and say, you didn't get 150 points off. 150 to 200 is 4 or 5 good sentences. I'm not looking for you to put so much out there that you have to scroll through it to read it. You ought to be able to read the whole thing on one screen. But it ought to be more than just, I think this is a great topic, or I saw somebody who did that. I want you to talk about what you think about it, or give an example about it, or something like that. So your initial post, first post for the week, 150 to 200 words. Your follow-up posts on other people may be 70 to 80 words, and it could be a little longer than that if you need to express an idea more completely, but nothing really short that just basically agrees. The key to the follow-up posts is that they add something to the conversation, or they steer it in a different direction, not just kind of, I agree, great post. I would encourage you not to even close the post with great post, because that's just filler. It doesn't add anything to the discussion. All right. When you're the team lead, if you are the lead, let's say for week number 3, I'm asking you this week to figure out which topic you want. There's a list of possible topics, and there's like 15 or 20 different topics. So you, as team 1, get the pick of the litter in terms of what topic you want. So this week, you tell me what your topic is off of that list. Or if you think of a topic that's not on that list, tell me what it is. Next week, Team 1, you'll be researching in your SHRM literature articles that deal with your topic that you're going to give to me hopefully by Wednesday of next week, so that I can get them loaded out to the discussion board. And then in week 3, you're going to be monitoring the board, asking questions, drawing out the responses, keeping the conversation going. So this week, Team 1, give me the topic. Next week, do the research. Week 3, lead the discussion. Meanwhile, Team 2, next week, you'll pick a topic. And then week 3, you'll research it. And week 4, you'll lead it. So everybody will be 1 week behind in a lag, continual chorus type of a thing. There's a schedule out on our homepage and an announcement that tells you if you're on Team 4, it is week 4 that you pick a topic, week 5 that you research it, week 6 that you lead it. And that's the same thing with everything else. So you can plan ahead as to what you need to be doing when. Now, if you're in Team 6, you don't get to pick a topic until teams 1 through 5 have already picked a topic. So if you're in Team 3, don't give me a topic today, because Team 1 or Team 2 might get that topic, and they have first priority since they have to present ahead of you. Hope that all makes sense. A couple of other things that I need to talk about, but I'm going to do in separate videos because it's getting to be a little much right now. It's really important especially since reading posts is part of your grade, that you get a couple of settings right on your Go view so that the computer automatically marks it read without you having to do it. I'm going to do that in a separate video. As long as I've got it by the end of the week before I start grading, it should be okay. But be looking for a series of other videos periodically during the semester where I explain things in more detail. And I hope, again, that this has given you a pretty good insight as to what we're trying to do this semester. I'm excited about the conversations we're going to have, the discussions, the revelations that we're going to have. The last page, general information about the school schedule. There's nothing particular to our calendar other than what you've got up here in the calendar. The only thing that's significant here are when particular papers are due, and if it's listed here, it's due Saturday night of that week. Okay. If you have questions and you want to talk to me personally, this is my cell phone here, and this is my office phone. You can get me from 8:30 to 2:30 generally on my office phone, except for Monday and Wednesday from 11 to 12:15 when I'm in class or when I have a meeting of some sort. But you can pretty much get me on my cell phone most any time. You might text me. You could call me. Chances are that I'm not going to know that you are the one doing that because I don't have your number in my phone. So I'll always start off in a text or whatever, identifying who you are. If you are in 2 of my classes, tell me which class it is that you're looking for, and I'll get back to you as quickly as I can. I'm going to ask you out of courtesy not to use the cell phone too much because I need to keep that free for family and whatnot. And honestly, because when I'm in my office, that's the best way to get me. And outside of my office, I want to try to put school behind me as much as I can. But we'll be available as you need it. So if you have questions at this point, put a post out there to the Ask Dr. Grimes discussion board, or email me, text me, call me, whatever else, and we'll try to address those things. But hopefully you got a pretty good idea of what you're going to do this semester, and you're getting even more and more excited about A, being in current issues, which means you're about to graduate here real soon, or at least B, that you're about to step into the real world of HR and start talking about some of the issues that we're having to deal with. That's going to be it for now. I've got to walk into another meeting here shortly, but I hope that it's been very helpful to look at this video and that you're ready to go at this point.